All right, think about this one for a second. If Superman didn't have a weakness, would Superman have any real fans? Would the Superman brand be as big as it is? How popular would Superman really be? Think about it. We talked about this in the previous video that without this tiny but yet impactful detail, Superman would be boring. We would always expect for him to be victorious, but just because there is a tiny chance that some evil villain will come and use kryptonite against him, it makes it suspenseful. It makes it exciting, and ultimately it allows you to build a connection with him. This vulnerability doesn't make him any less of a hero. Instead, it just makes him more relatable. And as entrepreneurs and content creators, acknowledging and sharing our flaws can have the same effect. And this, my friends, is what we know as vulnerability, or being vulnerable in your content. Vulnerability is a core principle here that you will learn throughout this course. It's one that we will preach about, and it's also one that we will continue learning and expanding upon this topic. Because as this community grows, we are all going to be at different places with this topic of being vulnerable on social media. Not all of us are quite comfortable with it, but it's important that you understand how critical this detail is, because without it, you won't be able to build up that hero story for yourself. It's an area that is going to be uncomfortable. There's no doubt about it. You just accept it now. But that's why you have a community here to support you with it all, because we're all on that same journey with you. Without this detail, you won't be able to truly connect with your audience. People will only know you on a very superficial level, and that is not what we want out of our social media experience. We want people to get to know us. Now, before we dive further into vulnerability, I want to make something real clear first. And we're going to touch on this topic again: vulnerability and authenticity. You hear these words a lot nowadays from all the gurus giving you the advice. It has become very popular now, and a lot of the gurus have jumped onto this trend, and this is the common message that you get now: be authentic, be vulnerable. And I mean, there is a lot of truth to this, right? That's why we're talking about all this. The gurus are definitely right about one thing though. People are wanting to actually connect with people. People want real. People are really craving connection in the digital world. And by being authentic, allowing yourself to be vulnerable on these platforms, it's not something that is common. There's so much fake in the digital world. Even when people are being authentic or being vulnerable, it's really hard to know who's being real and who is just doing it because it's the strategy. This is what I don't like about the advice from gurus these days, is that it has turned into a strategy, my friends. Being authentic or being vulnerable should never be a strategy. And if you ever catch me saying it in that way, or anything regarding being authentic and being the strategy, you better come and slap me in the face and remind me of this, okay? So in the previous video, we talked about authenticity. So we're going to define these two again, because I want to make sure that all of you get this right and you're able to make a clear distinction about how authenticity is displayed in your content and how vulnerability is displayed in your content. I'm going to say this again, and if you didn't already note it down, you make sure that you do so. Okay, here it is. You can be authentic without being vulnerable, but you cannot be vulnerable without being authentic. Okay, I'm gonna say that one more time. You can be authentic without being vulnerable, but you cannot be vulnerable without being authentic. So let's take a look at what we mean here, and we're going to highlight vulnerability because we're talking about character flaws here in this video. Authenticity, like we talked about in the previous video, authenticity is about being true to yourself in your content. It means your values, your beliefs, your personality are all consistent and genuine across all of your platforms. And remember, in both the digital realm and in the physical realm. Now, vulnerability. Vulnerability takes it a step deeper. Vulnerability gives your personal brand depth and dimension. Vulnerability involves opening yourself up about your challenges, about your fears, about your failures. This openness humanizes your brand, making yourself more approachable and relatable. A great question to ask yourself anytime that you find yourself creating a vulnerable post is, am I being authentic? Am I being true to myself and what I stand for? Would I share this in real life with someone, or am I just doing this for attention? Am I reacting to the situation and immediately jumping to social media to share a vulnerable post because I want likes and views? That's one to consider, because way too many people these days are being vulnerable, and it's great, but sometimes it's a little cringeworthy to see the inauthenticity in how people show it sometimes. You can feel it, you can see it. And tell me you haven't seen it for yourself on social media. Tell me I'm wrong. It really is an art in how you craft your post, how you share it, and to also make sure that it is authentic and in integrity. Okay, another core element in your content. Vulnerability involves opening yourself up to the depth of your comfort levels, to the depths at which you're willing to go. And for each and every single one of you, you are going to be at different levels with your comfortability and your vulnerability. However, as you continue to become more comfortable in sharing vulnerable content, as you start to see that it is providing value for others, I invite you to continue to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Ask yourself, what are the areas in my life that I can be vulnerable in that can provide valuable content? How much deeper can I go? And when you learn the pillars of content, you'll want to stick to those pillars when it comes to sharing vulnerable content. Now, we talked about parables in the previous module, and this is why these two are so closely related, because parables is how we can share our vulnerabilities from an empowered place. These are those opportunities to share those character flaws while using a parable to provide a valuable piece of information. Remember, it's taking that experience and taking the lesson or the moral that you've learned from it and providing it for your audience. All right, and so here's the last thing that I'll touch on when it comes to vulnerability. Vulnerability isn't just about sharing your challenges or your fears. Vulnerability is really about letting people into your life. How much about your business, both the positives and the negatives, are you willing to share? How much about your personal life, both positives and negatives, are you willing to share? And I already know, as soon as I said personal life, Angel, do I have to share my personal life? Yes. The answer is absolutely yes. You are building a personal brand. Some of you want to stay very private, and that's fine, but you will never build a personal brand without allowing people to connect with you in the ways that you want to connect with others. The people that you are trying to call into your life using this platform, you will never reach those people if you are not putting yourself out there. Trust me on this one, okay? There are ways to navigate privacy concerns and putting your personal life out there, but you have to promise me that you will stay open-minded. Do not close off now, because I've seen it time and time again, and be like, you're wrong, Angel. I don't have to share my personal life, or I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm just not going to do it. Listen, to that, I'll say, fine. I agree with you. You don't have to. You also don't have to connect with like-minded individuals. You also don't have to be a leader. You also don't have to call in the right people who will do business with you or refer you for who you are. Not just for what you do, for who you are. That is ultimately what we want in our business, is to do business with people that know, like, and trust us. And when I say know, I mean really know who we are. It truly is magical what happens in our lives, in our business, and the balance that it brings to the digital world when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We attract the right people and we repel away the ones that just won't or don't align with us. But it's hard, right? I get it. It's not that easy to share your vulnerabilities in your content. I believe being vulnerable is truly about being a great leader. Because when I think about sharing vulnerable content, I think about how am I adding value to someone else's life by sharing this? How am I taking my experience or my situation to share something with others, even if it's for the purpose of letting other people know that they are not alone? If it is just touching one other soul out there, that is a win. It is your responsibility as a leader to bring balance. If you are sharing your wins on social media, it is your responsibility to share your vulnerabilities as well. I'll add that when people see you sharing openly, they feel encouraged to share their stories. It creates a ripple effect of authenticity and support. Otherwise, guess what? Guess what happens? We create a perfect world for everyone to see. When all we do is share the wins and all the greats and all the goods in our lives, the curated perfection, we create this illusion for others that everyone's life is perfect except for mine. And yes, as a content creator, yes, you carry that responsibility to balance the scale. People want that from a leader. They want to know that someone like you also has challenges, also has fears. It builds trust with your audience. It tells your audience that you're willing to trust them with your story. And this trust that you give them, it fosters a similar response from your audience. They're more likely to engage with you, share, and stay loyal to your brand. It's like opening your home to guests. They feel welcome and they feel connected. You, my friend, you're here because you are a leader. Even if you are just stepping into your role as a leader, you know it in your heart that you are. And everything that we're here to learn together in this community will pave the way to building yourself up to be a leader in the digital world.